Welcome to the Working Your Mojo show. So that you know what it's about, the Working Your Mojo show is about career inspiration. It is designed to show you a different way to live a life. It includes things like hybrid careers or people that have a slashy as part of their name, but it gives you different career paths and different options so that you can choose your own adventure. The second thing that it does is it creates an awesome playlist of songs that are motivating and inspirational, so that when you're feeling like things aren't quite going where they need to go, this will just gear you up, get you excited about life. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Working Your Mojo, Career Inspiration. Today we're going to be talking about the Change Management Institute. So I'm just going to make sure I get the wording right, so give me a second. The Change Management Institute is a global, independent, not-for-profit association of change professionals. It is created by and is operated by members for members, constantly striving to push the boundaries of the change management profession. Today I'll be talking to Caroline Perkins, who was the president of the Change Management Institute when I was heavily involved, as well as Helen Campbell, who's the vice president of the Change Management Institute when I was heavily involved. So today we're going to reflect on the magic of our three different skill sets that drove or allowed the Change Management Institute, or CMI for short, to be where it is today. So we're kind of a bit of a reflection process, but didn't happen at the time when I left after 8 years. So today we've taken this opportunity to meet with these two formidable women and to have a bit of a chat about where the Change Management Institute is and what we contributed to it. Alrighty, so thank you very much today. I've got two very important guests. All of my guests are important, but these are important to her, if that is even a thing. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. I have today Caroline Perkins and Helen Campbell, who we've known each other for a while.
Eons, should we say?
Yeah.
24 years?
I think so.
22, 24 years, something like that.
Yeah, yes, actually I think it would be about that. That is quite scary. Gosh. Okay.
Year 2000 had lots to answer for, and that's one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we spent 8 years working on CMI together, apart from other work that we did as well. And I feel kind of really privileged that sometimes I get compared as peers of theirs. I look up to them quite a bit, but I always sometimes people go, "Oh, and you," and I'll be like, "Oh, okay, thanks." That's really amazing. They have incredibly brilliant brains and are just super generous, and they always have my back and always help me work out all the little twisty bits that I've got in my brain and sort of help me unravel it. One of the most funniest stories when we launch into CMI, which I won't do right now actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get each of you to introduce yourselves and just as if I'm a 4-year-old. So how about we do that? And then we'll start from some other bits and pieces. So welcome. Who would like to go first?
I think I'll let Helen go first.
Nice!
This will give you some insight into the relationship we have and to the partnership that we have.
Yeah.
She's quicker on the draw than me,
yeah,
which means that I end up doing... Okay. So do you want me to go sort of right back? Do you want the 2-second version?
Just to right now.
Essence of Helen.
I will do the part where we go right back.
Yeah.
But for now, just what do you do? Tell me about you.
All right. So I'm Helen Campbell, and right now I do very little work. I do an awful lot of gardening, and have turned into my mother, and I'm a serial volunteer.
Right. Nice. Thank you.
And I'm Caroline Perkins. I also do nothing, but I really do nothing. So I have recently retired 3 months ago, and I am literally just sitting at the moment and just enjoying my life, thinking about what it is I'm going to be doing.
Right. Ooh, that sounds intriguing. Thank you for that. In terms of today's conversation, I wanted to break it into two parts. So one part where we get to know a little bit more about each of you, and then the second part where we do a little bit of like a microcosm of kind of the time that was spent on CMI. So I might start there. I feel like that is where is the place to start. So let's just get my piece of paper with my very formal questions in there. So a little bit of an insight we just saw into the partnership of the two of you. So how did your partnership work with the CMI? And, feel free to include me in that process, because I feel like it was like what would you call a partnership that's got 3 people? A tri-partnership? Anyway.
Triumvirate? No, I don't know.
Not a triad.
Thank you, Fairy. But anyway,
it's a triumph.
A triumph. Nice.
It's a triumph.
Nice.
Yeah.
So maybe start with the two of you.
I'll go first this time. I think we didn't start the CMI and create this relationship.
Yeah.
We had this relationship, and that enabled us to start the CMI.
Yeah, cool.
Is where I would go with that.
Yeah, nice.
In that we've always been, all of us have been really good at connecting with like-minded people.
Yeah.
And in this regard, we are all in the same spot at the same time, recognising the same problems, and we all were brainstorming together about what we might do about it. So when we actually kicked off, it was a done deal that we would be part of that team to do it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think it was organic in its nature, but because we were already in that space thinking about it, and that's how we started off, rather than start something and go, right, now who?
Yeah, okay, cool. Awesome. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that nails it. The relationship was already there. The relationships were already strong.
Yeah.
We were all also at a point in our life, I think, we were able to do it. None of us had kids. A lot of our colleagues at that time probably had, young families and things, which meant that if they wanted to think about it, they just didn't have the headspace. We were all at a time of life and a place of life, I think, where we could all pitch in and do. And also, to the point about being like-minded and like people, we're all doers. So none of us at the time to sit back and say, well, it'd be really nice if somebody else started this sort of
thing. Can you
thing.
do that over there?
Yes, we don't wait for others. If we want something, we just go and do it. Because then also we're slightly control freaks, I think, and we get the one that we want. So so yes, it came from a very strong foundation, and also at a time for the profession as well.
Yeah,
so I think where the profession was at that time, where we were in our lives, there was a really strong relationship, sort of common cause. It almost couldn't happen, at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was definitely emerging as a profession at that time, rather than being sort of established like project management was kind of like a bit more of an emerging thing. There was some experts like Dexter Dunphy around, but there wasn't a lot of people. So yeah, I'll definitely imagine. So what was the desire or the root cause that kind of started it off in your mind?
Well, I think everybody'd been working in this space, but there'd been no sort of formal structure around what it was. And a lot of people had done education, they'd done the AGSM course or whatever, and had got some inkling that there was something called change management around. But nobody knew how to take the theory and do it, or there are very few people who are able to take the theory and do it. So I think that's where we were thinking about, what we need a professional support network. There are a couple of, networks out there, but what is it that we could bring together? Because lots of people were asking for help. How do we do this? This is a neat thing, really important. Everybody's realising there's something missing in the sort of transformation project management space, but what is it? How can we bring that capability together and support people to do?
Yeah. Yep.
And I remember the sort of watershed moment in our change terms, of course, our burning platform, was I think Caroline and I have been to various breakfast events, and we've been to a project management, we've been to the Institute of Project Management and done their seminar, and we'd gone to one morning, which was the Institute of Training and Development, and we came out of there and we were on the bus coming back down into the city, and saying, it's like, that's not quite us. It's interesting, it's useful, but it's not quite us. That one's not quite us either. And then it became, so what is us? And that really is I think the moment when on that bus trip, when we started to say, well, there must be something else out there. We'll go and find out. There'll be something somewhere, and we'll be the Sydney chapter. And then we looked, and there was nothing. And we looked overseas, and there was nothing. And we went, we'll see if anyone's interested, and we'll start it. And then the ball started rolling.
Yeah. The famous bus trip.
And we were sitting on the back seat like little kids being walked into. We want our party. Yeah.
So how then did it get started? So you've obviously got some like-minded people that are interested in doing something. So how did it kind of get started from there?
We always say, rather than taking a project management approach, we took a change management approach to it. So we got a coalition of the willing, didn't we? So we went round and like-minded people like yourself, who is willing, able to do some work with us to set this up. And it was about 15 people. We had a meeting, 15 people. And those same 15 people then put some money in, and that was our seed funding. It was from these 15 people we put the money in, and that enabled us to do some things. And then we did some research, early on. We did this, 2004, 2005. We did some research about what are the things that people think are important. It was networking, it was education, it was accreditation. And we thought, well, what's the importance of those things? What's easy to do against what's difficult to do, and how important things are. We sort of, networking, I think, was the thing we landed on, and that's where we started. So it's a very much an organic, as I said, approach to it, but led by people who are passionate about the space and are willing to listen to people and do what was wanted rather than what we thought was required. So it was, again, the uptake was quicker, I think, because we took that approach.
Yeah, we followed the passion, and I think, again, in change terms, I remember in the early days several people asking us, what's your growth plan? Like, what's the next chapter you're going to open? And what's your strategy for this country or that country? And we haven't got one. Why haven't we got one? Well, because if there's a group of interested people in Perth that want to set one up, we'll help them do that. But if there's no one interested, we're not going to go banging down doors on Perth to make it. It's not a growth strategy. And a lot of people, I think, were a bit bemused that we didn't have this sort of expansion plan, back in funding. I mean, I think to the funding element that Caroline talked about, I seem to remember we chucked in $200 or something. It's not as if we were looking for big funding. So.
And in fact, it was a bit of a fight all the time, wasn't it, to remain organic and go where the passion was, because we felt that if it was going to take off, it was a volunteer organisation. If it was going to take off, it had to be where the passion took people. Yeah. And we found that out. A number of people say, "Well, I want to start up a chapter in blah," and we go, "Okay, yeah, we'll help you start a chapter in this particular area." But as soon as that person dropped away, it just fell away. You had to make sure there was true passion for something, because you were reliant on people to really take it on and go with it. So
drive it from there.
Awesome.
For sure. So we found out about how it started. So looking back now, and it's been a while since we've been involved. I think we were talking about it before, about around the 2013-14 sort of mark. So it's almost 10 years, which is, it would be 10 years. It's over 10 years. Which is kind of crazy. And it's really global, like there's chapters kind of flourishing everywhere. How does it make you feel about knowing that little bus trip is translated into something?
Super proud. Super proud. It feels like your baby's grown up into a teenager and they've gone and they're, kicking goals themselves. It's that, to me, that's sort of how it feels. I've really only been paying attention from the sort of, because I wanted to leave it go, but it does seem that it's still got its legs and it's still out there, and I feel super proud that it's still going and being useful.
I'm a bit gobsmacked. For a couple of reasons. I mean, one, we clearly happen to be the people that landed on a need at a time And then there was the potential for the exponential growth because there were so many people out there, and there still are, who need that connection to a professional body. But I think also because it relies so much on volunteers, and it's so hard to get volunteers, volunteering is plummeting, and so the fact that people are still giving up their time, which they've got to sustain the organisation. Yeah. I think the other thing is to see that on the board there's still some of the people that we were working with 15 years ago is actually really cool, and I think has given it the solidity at the core that some of those people have been with it for a long time, and some people are fresh and new to it, so it's clearly able to keep growing. So.
Yeah, even seeing Carla voted in as president was pretty cool, considering right at the very beginning she was one of the chapters staying up in Brisbane. So yeah, really, really awesome. So the second to last question I want to ask around this, then we'll move on to finding a little bit more about you, is what does the establishment of the CMI, what does it celebrate about each of you? So what unique sort of skills, contributions does it kind of say that's my piece that I added that celebrates? Does that make sense? I feel like that question was a little bit convoluted, but do you know what I'm saying?
I can find an answer.
Yeah, let's see if that...
Shall I find an answer and then we'll see if it retrofits? I think one of the things that we were able to learn through doing CMI that we wouldn't have learned through working was definitely the partnership with Caroline. I mean, clearly we've been mates forever, but I think we were able to, in a greenfield site, work out what our strengths were and play to our strengths, whereas in a role you're somewhat driven by what the role needs, what the client needs, and often working in different organisations. And actually to be joined at the hip for 10 years and to play to our strengths, because our strengths are very different. People often say, sort of put us in one pod, and actually in the two and the three of us together have some things in common and lots of things that are quite different. And I think what it enabled us to do was to give us a space where Caroline was able to do the stuff that she does well. She does the leadership, she does the spokesman, she does the calm. I do the just give me a piece of work and a project and I'll go away and deliver it and bring it back. And I'm a fabulous second in command. I'm a terrible leader and a fabulous second in command. But I only found that out through the work we were doing because it gave us the space to learn where we fit in, what we were good at, what we weren't good at, and to complement each other. Yeah. So I think in terms of our partnership, it certainly gave us that. And then I think because again it's all self-generated, so you're not driven by what the client wants, you're not driven by the brief or the the pay rate or the length of the assignment or whatever it is that you are in your working life. It gave us the ability to create things, and I'm not. You're the creative one in our triumvirate here. I'm not the creative one, but it gave me an opportunity again to deliver something from scratch that I'm still immensely proud of in the accreditation work and the competency models. Yeah,
and so you should be. I still use it to today when people are like, I want to find out if I'd be any good at change. I'm like, cool, here you go. Use this as your instant self-assessment. So yeah, absolutely. Did you want to answer that celebrates about you?
Well, from a leadership perspective, I think it's enabled me to tap into something I hadn't realised I'd got, which is this sort of leading a volunteer organisation. The fact that you could inspire people and get them to do things without necessarily having the stick of paying your wages or KPIs and things, what people always think is you couldn't say to them, do this or you lost your job. They go, well, I'm doing it my way or I'm gone anyway. The fact that you had to change your leadership style to enable that has been so useful elsewhere, and I've leveraged that learning and leveraged it elsewhere, because I think more and more now working in corporate environments is more about the volunteer organisation anyway. So if you treat people like you might want to treat a volunteer organisation, become a better leader. So I think that was the thing for me that really helped me to grow and flower my leadership. Flower sounds really pansy-like, but it's like just to grow, that sort of test things out, see how things go. You push here, you stand back here. The options that you've got to do that from a leadership perspective, I thought was just so valuable.
And I think also the holding of the line, I think you in particular, Karen, but I think both, like holding the line that we're not going to just push this agenda forward. If there's appetite, follow that energy and then pursue whatever it needs to be done at that particular thing. And I think that was a super helpful process, because it was very easy to go completely off track and make it a very commercial model. And I think it was really, keeping that kind of solid foundation of just holding that line throughout. And I think that's a key leadership component, is like, no, that's the hill we're heading on, not that hill. So
yeah, and I think it was very difficult for people,
Yeah.
because everybody sort of came to it with a sense of, what can I get out of CMI by volunteering?
Yes.
Because we actually tried to change it back and say, no, what does the client, the customer, the professional want from this? Not what can you get out of it,
Yeah.
but what can you put back in?
yeah,
So I think many of the people that came to it and flourished in it were people who wanted to put back rather than take out.
yeah,
But many of the people that first came wanted to take out,
Yeah.
because it was, what can I get out of this for my business or for me or whatever.
yeah, definitely.
When they realised how much hard work there was involved.
Yeah.
Back to it too quickly.
Actually, I just remember one story that might be worth sharing, and I think it was to back up what you were saying, to build on what you were saying about Caroline's leadership. And I remember this moment. I don't know whether you two remember this moment. We were in, I think it was when you were in those funky offices with the climbing wall. And we were doing a bit of brainstorming about who we were and what our purpose, I don't know what we called it in those days, a mission or a vision or something, whatever it was. And Caroline insisted we put the word international in there. Global, that was it. And the rest of us all went, we haven't even got Sydney up and running, and she's doing the global. And you absolutely stood by that point, and you said, we have to be global. And we went, can we just start with Australia? No, the statement has to say global. And again, that Caroline setting the bar and holding true, that you're not negotiable, and you're very negotiable on lots of things, but you are not negotiable on global is going in there, because if we're going to do this and there's nothing else out there in the world, the opportunity is global.
Yeah, there's one opportunity here, let's take it.
Yeah.
Picking up what you were saying about what it celebrates about me, I think the opportunity for me to play in spaces, which I love doing, play, build, piss off and do something else, build something else, because I kind of like that, was really good as well. So even things when I tell people, they're like, you did membership? I'm like, yes, I was on to do membership. And it's totally not something that I would normally do, because it's all about finances and processes and stuff like that. But I'm really proud that I got to do things that were outside my comfort zone, that were not the things that I'd normally do, just so that I could have a bit of a go at it. So that was kind of good fun. To do those sorts of things, but
and what an important part of the jigsaw that was.
Yeah.
That again, neither of us were getting to. We needed to bring in money,
Yeah.
and we had to cross. I think there was also a sort of spiritual line that we were a bit nervous about. That said, we create something. People are coming along to drinks. They're getting to know people in the profession. That's all cool. In the background, we'll start to look at accreditation. But there was a point at which you've got to start sort of charging, and I think we were a little bit. And you said, "I'll take that bit." And what's membership, and how do we do it, and how do we process it? And it was clunky to start with. But I think what you did was push us and the organisation to that next level of maturity that said, well, let's see what happens when people have got to pay, because we can't go to that next horizon without having some revenue.
Yeah. And apparently the membership numbers are quite healthy now, so I feel good about it. Good about that. Mentoring, a few other bits and pieces as well. So I think it celebrates, because I was having actually a chat with Steffi a couple of months ago, and she was saying, oh, but you're a builder. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting that, like, I'm not a maintainer? And she's like, no, you're a builder. You build and then you go once it's built, which I think is a really good insight on her behalf, because she doesn't know me very well at all, but that is what I do. I build and then I get bored usually and want to do something else, which I kind of do. So hopefully this will be a bit more enduring, but anyway. The one other thing that I wanted to just quickly talk about for CMI was the David Rock meeting. Because I thought it was a real eye-opener for all of us around what was happening, because he was in the States then. For those that don't know, David Rock is the founder of Results Coaching and of the Neuro Leadership and Neuro Leadership Summit, and he has a very big brain. It's a very, very big brain with lots of thoughts going in that brain, and very, very clever man. And I remember that meeting being something that was an unexpected but worthwhile process where we spoke to him about what we were doing and what our and very presidentially, very vice presidentially presented their thoughts and stuff, and he was giving us lots of reassurance about how the fact that the states were behind and they had nowhere near that. And for me, I always reflect on that meeting as a little bit of an interesting one, in that there was the three brains, so Helen, Caroline and David, and me doing the comic relief. Because I was like interjecting with this and making it a little bit light, because it was getting at some points like, oh, this is really heavy stuff. But I know that I can hold my own from an academic and brain perspective, but it was just one of those meetings I thought was quite hilarious. So I was picking up on the David Rock conversation, which was one of the highlights for me. Is there any highlights for you that you want to point out?
I'll maybe kick off this one. Firstly, it was really cool, but also to remember that David Rock was very early on in his career in Euro leadership. He was just on the verge of breaking international markets. So whilst it was pretty cool to be sitting in a cafe having a chat and getting the advice of David Rock, he was still very early on in the journey of what his business and research and everything has become. And I think it was cool to be talking to him. One of the things I remember was that he was very keen for us to see global, again, that sort of global lens. I think we were talking about Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and he said, no, London, New York, Paris. And it was like, oh, okay. And I think that was the journey that he trod, was to say, I'm going global, I'm going to do a conference in New York, I'm going to do a conference in Singapore, and I'll probably do one in my hometown. So I think that was something that I remember about the sort of content of that discussion.
Yeah, cool.
I think going forward from there, this whole global concept, again, very opportunistic, because I remember going on holiday to South Africa and catching up with people in South Africa about setting something up there, going back to the UK and having a conversation with people who eventually did take it forward in the UK to set up in the UK. And, by accident, working with Chris MacDonald in China about doing something over in China, working with the business he was working for, and then we sort of accidentally launched the CMI in China with Mandarin news cameras and everything, which was a bit scary, and we didn't really mean to do it at that time, but didn't go anywhere. But I was really worried about that. But yeah, it's almost one of those sort of the global thing, starting off with that in mind actually takes you into a different space than it does if you're literally just setting up networking events locally. It really pushed us a bit.
Yeah, and I think it opens those opportunities as well to have conversations in places that you wouldn't, or to seek out people that are in places because you've got something other than a holiday that you're trying to do, so some other broader purpose.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to share about the CMI before we move on to part 2 of the interview?
Well, we did go down quite a few paths that we then pulled back from, so I think that's the other thing, nowadays everybody talks about agile, but we really were being quite agile about this. We go, well, let's try this. Oh no, that doesn't work. Let's try this. That, so that sort of approach, suited us really well. But it did mean that we came back. But there was always this particular growth. It wasn't linear in that regard, was it? It was just sort of, yeah.
The other thing is the experimentation around it. So agile, but that willingness to just give something a go and see what happens.
Go with a passion.
Yeah, I think is really key, and something that I talk to a lot of organisations about that is missing now. So that just ability to try something and see, with all of the things that go along with just that experimentation process. But there's a real mindset shift of just going, I'm just going to try it and see. Which is disappearing rapidly, which is a bit of a shame.
I think some of the safety that goes with the process. So as Caroline says, you might call it agile now, you might call it a proof of concept, you might call it all sorts of things. We've got some lovely fancy labels nowadays. We were just sort of having a bit of a go, seeing if it worked, seeing if it picked up. Do people want it? No, well, let's do something else then. There was no science, there was no labels, there was no. We were just doing what people did.
Yeah. True startup.
It was fun.
It was fun. Yeah, it was fun. It was really good fun. I feel so privileged to be a part of it with you guys. It was awesome fun.
And that's probably one of the things, 10 years on, it's not 10, 11 years since we finished up.
Yeah.
8 years since Caroline finished up. I think to look at the amount of time that we spent outside of work, if we hadn't have had CMI, we wouldn't have the friendships that we have amongst our small group now, because we went through the tough times, the good times, the bad times, the try things, the fail things, the everything together. We actually spent heaps of time together when we were working in different organisations and built really strong friendships that are still with us today.
Yeah. The I think it's a Pullman now, but the Western Hotel down in that foyer area where we used to just meet and have like a coffee or a drink or something, just catch up. That place is very fond in my memories. Just meeting there to work out what we could do, convincing organisations to do things. So thank you for that little trip down memory lane. That was awesome, and part of the reason why I wanted to do this with both of you together. I hope you found that an inspiring thing. I know it's a little bit different to the normal Working Your Mojo career inspiration, but I think it was a really important aspect, and I quite enjoyed reflecting on the legacy that was left as a result of the work that the three of us did. I know that I was involved for 8 years, I think Helen for a little bit longer and Caroline for a little bit longer than that. So that 8 years of work really did create some fruition, and we're both, as you could see from the video, all of us, not both, the three of us, extremely proud of our contribution that we made to what is now very much a global organisation, is doing quite well. I think the other thing that's powerful about this particular episode is that 3 people can actually make a significant difference to a whole bunch of people. So change managers that were part of the board, but also change managers of the future. So you really can, 3 women can sit down, put their heads together, rely on the strengths that they bring to the party, and actually create quite an amazing organisation as a result of that. So they're my kind of 2 takeouts from that. It's amazing what 3 people can do, and it's important sometimes to lean in and reflect on how much of a legacy that you've created in something such as the Change Management Institute.